The next category is thematic resonance. Now, thematic resonance is really the impact you feel from this play or film, and on the spectrum between or the spectrum that we're looking at, on one side we have light fare, on the other side we have probing. So light fare, you walk out of the theater feeling, a bit of a spring in your step, not feeling like your life has changed or anything. On the other side, a play or a film with probing thematic resonance, you're going to leave moved by what you've seen. On the extremes, you have devastated when it's perhaps life-changing. There are times when films and plays are that way. And on the other extreme, you've got something that is so insubstantial that it leaves you with nothing, a sense of fluff. There is quite a bit of subjectivity in this genre consideration, but there probably could be a consensus among people who go see certain plays. The next genre consideration will be character complexity. On the one end of the spectrum is type, and the other end is multifaceted. So this is the basic division. Type character is what we might call a two-dimensional character, a character that basically once they walk on stage we say, oh, that's that kind of character. In Roman times there was Miles Gloriosus was his name, and he was the swaggering soldier. And when the Roman audiences would see him walk on stage, they knew exactly what this character was about. He was brash, he was arrogant, he was violent, maybe a little dull-witted. And so the play was not about exploring his dimensionality. The play was about what kind of plot complications will he get into. Will he end up attacking the lover, which is another type? The lover is motivated simply by love, by the desire to get together with the loved one. Another type character, probably a young lover, in love with another young lover that he or she can either have or not have because of a parent who's in the way, and the parent is going to be a type character. They're going to be the disciplinarian, demanding that probably their daughter never see that boy again. This is the kind of type characters. Now, they don't just exist in comedy, but I use the example particularly of Roman comedy because there were such clear types in that particular dramatic genre. So, if you have type on the one hand, on the other hand you have multifaceted, where a character has dimensionality, where a lot of what we're exploring in the story is the different aspects of their character. We can see that they have that they struggle like we do between contradictory impulses. On the extreme of the multifaceted, we might find lifelike characters. A character that is so multifaceted that we say, well, that's a lot like me. Probably the greatest character we've discovered in our class in that regard is Hamlet. Not because Hamlet talks like us, but because Hamlet has so many conflicting intentions and characteristics. On the other end, we might call the character cartoonish on this extreme end of type, or on the extreme end of lack of character complexity, because type characters are consistent. With a cartoonish character, I use that term because I don't know what a better term to describe it. On the cartoonish end, I would say a character that doesn't even have the consistency of a type character. For example, Family Guy, Peter in Family Guy. I'm using some contemporary references. Or Homer Simpson in The Simpsons. These are characters not just because they're cartoons, but because their type is the obnoxious, overweight American male. Perhaps dull-witted, and yet that would be the type. And yet Homer, when he pulls a crayon out of his nose, suddenly becomes a genius. That's when a character lacks consistency. Or Homer says something very ironic that people that are smarter than Homer get, but the only way of Homer being inspired with that that intelligent a remark is by breaking with his basic type character. So in that case, Homer is not necessarily becoming more multifaceted. It's that his type is breaking because of the impulses of the writers. And with cartoons, we don't mind, and with certain film, we don't mind. It's not simply the cartoon genre. It's that storytelling is of such lack of consequence that we enjoy, hopefully, the break in that kind of character consistency. If a character is this way because of a writer's lack of skill or lack of consistency, that's another matter. The next genre consideration is audience appeal. On one end of the spectrum is a broad appeal, appeals to a large demographic. For example, primetime television is a good example of that. On the other end of the spectrum is classy, where you have certain plays or films that only appeal to a certain class of people. I don't mean to be elitist about this, but it's a consideration, especially in theater. Theater tends to actually not be as broad in its appeal anymore because of the advent of film and television. At one time, theater was quite broad in its appeal. Now, even the fact that people self-select to go to theater means that on a scale between 1 to 5, a play is probably a 3 to begin with. I just throw that out there. In our time, that's probably the case. On the extreme end is, let's say, a number 5 for audience appeal is a very exclusive appeal. Now that doesn't necessarily mean it's only to the intellectual elite. It could be to a specific group, that a play is written for a very specific group of people, and therefore it has an exclusive audience in mind. That's one way to look at it. On the other extreme is an appeal that is so low. It's not necessarily going to appeal to more people. It's that its material is so, I use the word coarse, that it would not even appeal to, let's say, the mainstream. And in that case, to use an example from the Roman times, it would be let's say some of the barbaric games that would go on, or in the time of Shakespeare, say the bear baiting that might go on in one of the same theaters that they might produce a play in. On another night they might have dogs attacking a bear. If a play included a lot of gruesome elements, somehow my mind is thinking about those sorts of things. There may be entertainments. I don't know if professional wrestling would be considered a kind of coarse entertainment where it's theatrical, but it generally appeals to 14-year-old boys.